The Cavaliers put together another insane comeback. Is there a party crasher for home court in the West? And Isaiah Thomas wants an NBA return. It's the Locked On NBA podcast on Wednesdays. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know around the association. And on Wednesdays, I'm your usual co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. I'm joined today, Andy Kamenetzky, at Cam Brothers, host of Locked On Lakers. It's kind of a fun night of games, I thought, man.
There's a lot of suspense going on. You had overtime, comebacks. It's a good night.
Yeah, we'll touch on that Suns and Denver game, which went to overtime as the late game. But I want to lead with, because I think this is huge, the Cavaliers comeback over the Boston Celtics, a 22-point fourth quarter comeback, snapping the Celtics 11-game winning streak. Let me ask you this, because when you and I were planning out the show before we started recording here, is this more about the Celtics or more about the Cavs?
I think it's more about the Cavaliers. I mean, having just watched the Lakers erase a 21-point fourth quarter deficit to beat the Clippers, you realize just how difficult that is to do. Like that is exceptionally hard, particularly against a team as good as Boston. But also, too, I think it just speaks to Cleveland's resiliency all season. Like, this was a game where they didn't have Donovan Mitchell, they didn't have Max Strus. And then I went through and looked at, because Cleveland's been dealing with this all season. I took a look at all the guys on the team who averaged 20 minutes or more per game. Listen to the list of games missed among most of those guys, important players. Jared Allen, 6 games. Donovan Mitchell, 14 games. Evan Mobley, 23 games. Darius Garland, 24 games. Karis LeVert, 12 games. Dean Wade, 9 games. Isaac Okoro, 9 games. That's a lot of guys who've missed decent or even big chunks of the season. And Cleveland has managed to keep winning games. It's really, really impressive. And I think it also, Jake, speaks to what seems to be a pretty good team-wide resolve to take the steps forward after last year in the playoffs and some of the questions about whether or not, Allen and Mobley, for example, can work together. Donovan Mitchell's future in Cleveland, all sorts of stuff like that. None of tonight answers it definitively, but I think between that and really good additions in a guy like Max Strus, for example, Cleveland's done a really nice job.
Yeah, look, they're right in the thick of the spot. It's going to be them or the Bucks for second in the East. And you mentioned kind of all the adversity they've overcome. Like, Evan Mobley left this game early, and they still managed a 22-point comeback in the fourth quarter. And it's been their role players all season that have just really stepped up for them. And in this one, right, like, it was just Dean Wade going off in the fourth quarter, being perfect, not missing a shot. This is literally a week to the day, right? A week ago, where you had Max Strus go off and hit that game winner in the fourth quarter here. You had Dean Wade off the bench playing the entirety of the fourth, 7 of 7. He made 5 threes, 6 rebounds, right? 20 points. That's a pretty incredible thing for a role player to do. And their role players have stepped up because they've had to so well, and every single time they've been called on this season. There's a little bit of controversy at the end of this one where you had Jason Tatum rise up, miss a shot, was called for a foul on Darius Garland. The Cavs had their challenged it. Rightly, I think, overturned. They said that Tatum kicked his leg out. You agree with that call?
Yeah, I feel like controversy is doing a lot of work there, Jake. Like,
it's probably
at best for Boston, that's just a no call play on. I think accurately it is a foul on Jason Tatum. There is no world in which that's a foul on Darius Garland.
No, there shouldn't have been, right? Like, at all.
He's standing there getting kicked. Like, I know Jason Tatum is a superstar. He's, in the MVP conversation, but, there still has to be rules. Otherwise, it's anarchy, Jake.
We live in a society, right?
Yeah, this is society.
Also, look, I'm just glad it's actually not marred by like a an incorrect call or a call that they should have like fixed at the end of the game, which we've seen happen a couple of times so far this year. And like, oh, cool. The refs actually got it right at the end of the game. That's like a strong improvement for the
this
NBA
one wasn't
here.
that hard to get right. I mean,
well, they blew it in the first place, right? They called the foul there. Like if the Cavs don't have a challenge, like all of a sudden this is a different conversation we're having here, right? Like, so I'm glad everything worked out probably as it should have about this one. Let me ask you this. You know, the Celtics a little bit at times have struggled, I think, in some of clutch situations. You've seen them, you know, kind of, they're still a good clutch team. And I think you're going to see Boston fans kind of overblow this a little bit here. You worry about them, say, if it comes down to like them and the Cavs in the Western Conference Finals in a clutch situation, or are you still taking Boston?
Boston's been the best team in the East all season. I mean, I want to give Cleveland the credit they deserve for pulling off a comeback like this. Again, especially against a really good team. Boston, you look at their point differential on the season, it's plus 11.2. They just beat Golden State by like
I had to look and see if that score was like real when I saw that, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're fine. I'm sure they're mad. I'm sure they're disappointed, but they're fine. I don't think exposed any weaknesses with the Celtics as much as just like, man, Cleveland will fight. Like the Cavaliers are a team that will fight you at the very least.
They just refuse to give up, right? Again, you had Max Strus a week ago hit the second longest game winner in NBA history. And that's after he had an insane fourth quarter where he had like 4 straight made threes, 5 straight made threes, something like that, or whatever it was. This one was Dean Wade with a putback dunk was the ceiling one, not even a 3-pointer, right? So they're getting these kind of like awesome moments. You mentioned though, right? Like it's so easy to go down in a fourth quarter, down 22 against probably the best team in the league in the Boston Celtics and just be like, whatever, we're going to move on from this one. We don't need to try. Let's just pack it in, call it a night, get to our dinners early, go on to the next game here. For them not to give up though, you know, they went on that like 14-1 streak they had when they didn't have Evan Mobley, they didn't have Garland and Mitchell and all of those guys. It's just been a really overall impressive season, I think, for the Cavaliers, even if they're probably still going to lose to Boston in the playoffs or something like that.
Well, they may, but until they eventually face Boston, if that's the way things shake out, they're still looking to try to give themselves as much home court advantage as possible. And they're trying to keep the pace with Milwaukee. You know, they're now on a 6-game winning streak. They're half a game behind the Bucks for the 2 seed. Like it is quite possible that they could end up, you know, against the Bucks in the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
You want to try to have that potential game 7 against a team that has won a championship and Giannis and the moments Dame can have in the playoffs. You want that 7th game potentially in Cleveland.
Oh, absolutely. I think getting that kind of home court advantage here, there's no chance they get first, but getting the 2nd seed, I think, is a really big deal there, especially with some like the up and downness of the Bucks that we've seen, even if they're starting to figure it out in this moment. So Cavs are fun to watch. They've become like a league pass team to me where it's like, I don't want to miss their games anymore here. And I'm glad we keep getting them on Tuesday nights for the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA here, right? Let's talk about 2 more teams. Let's talk about the Pelicans, the team I cover, and the Phoenix Suns, and maybe the Lakers too, and a couple of others here. Is there a party crasher potentially for top 4 in the Western Conference? That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your vehicle alive. And eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up. I actually work on all of my cars. I have a 50-year-old car that I am restoring. I work on my daily driver. So whether you want speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number 1 vehicle, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. It's why I get all of my parts for all of my vehicles at eBay Motors, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your vehicle alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and it's also available on YouTube. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows like this one, covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Andy, on Wednesdays, we play Real or Fake. We actually have a theme for this. I don't know if you've heard this. Hold on.
Is this real or fake? Just ask John and Jake.
Ask Andy today instead of John, but John's got to go cover that 22-point collapse for the Boston Celtics here.
He would not be in the mood for this tonight.
No, he would not be in the mood for this one. Did you enjoy that a little bit as the guy who covers the Lakers?
I didn't not enjoy it.
There we go.
I mean, I didn't call in sick for this show, Jake.
Yeah, that's true, right? You were not like celebrating or anything here. You did want to be on and talk about this one. You said it's more about the Cavaliers than the Celtics too. That says something there. So the Phoenix Suns and the New Orleans Pelicans got a win on Tuesday night. Phoenix going on the road, beating the Denver Nuggets. New Orleans blowing out the Toronto Raptors. That's on the heels of them blowing out the Indiana Pacers too. Not great teams, but not bad teams. They're in striking distance of the Los Angeles Clippers here for the 4th seed. So let's play Real or Fake here. Is there another team other than one of the current top 4 teams that you think is going to end up being, or so here, let me rephrase the question to go with Real or Fake. Real or Fake, a team outside of the Timberwolves, Thunder, Nuggets, or Clippers will be a top 4 seed in the Western Conference?
I'm saying fake because I find the Pelicans and the Suns they're both difficult teams to get a beat on. And I think the Kings are actually just heading downward, and maybe that's my bias because, or wish casting, speaking it into existence because the Lakers play them tonight, in a critical game for the Lakers, looking to try to get out of the play-in. But I find the Pelicans, especially, Jake, and you'd obviously have the best insight on this of anybody. I find them very, very hard to figure out exactly who they are and what they're about, because on paper, they are a talented team that I think could be a very difficult matchup to try to contend with. But I also can't figure out who they're going to be on a night-to-night basis. And Phoenix, congrats to them for this comeback tonight, or not even a comeback, for solidifying.
Yeah.
Right. They blew a lead, but they solidified it in overtime. They managed to win on the road in overtime. That is impressive. But Stan Van Gundy during the broadcast talked about how the Suns are the worst 4th quarter team in the league. I looked up their offensive rating. It's pretty crazy. They have the worst offensive rating in the 4th quarter of any team in the league, not counting tonight's game. But they have the best 3rd quarter offensive rating. So you want to talk about things truly going into the crapper when the 4th quarter begins. That is an insane swing. They go from a 125.3 offensive rating in the 3rd to 103.5 in the 4th. That's nuts.
Yeah, that's not a team you trust, right? And this question comes down to, is it the Pelicans or Suns? Could they get the 4 seed, right? No offense to the Lakers, the Kings, the Mavs, and the Warriors.
We just want to, the Lakers just want to try to get out of the play-in, or at the very least host a play-in game. The 4 seeds, that's rainbows and moon pies, Jake. That's
it's either the Pelicans or the Suns. And look, as the guy who covers the Pelicans, I'd love to see them get the 4 seed, but I think this is fake too. Partially, I think it's just you're running out of time, right? The Pelicans are 3 games back right now of the Clippers. I think the Suns are 4 games back of the Clippers right now. With 20 games left to go, that's a tough hurdle to overcome. If we had 40 games to go, I'd say maybe it's possible that either of those 2 teams could do it. But when I look at the Phoenix Suns, they blew a significant lead in this game against the Denver Nuggets. They got it back in overtime and kind of managed to win out, but Devin Booker's hurt. We don't know the exact extent of that injury. They need a lot more creation from him. You saw some very good playmaking from Kevin Durant in this game, but is he capable of doing that over the course of the season? You mentioned their real terrible start of those fourth quarters. Look, they're great in the third quarter, I think, probably because their stars are playing. And in the fourth quarter, they might be sitting to start that. I'd have to look into more of that. That's kind of my assumption here. And they're a thin team because they're so top heavy with those guys, right?
Well, I think it's also too, like, the fourth quarter is where teams really start locking in on both ends and where you're supposed to execute at your best. Phoenix has had their three stars together so little, and they don't have like a true point guard to really just keep things organized. It's not surprising to me that if things start to tighten up, the lack of continuity that they've had on this team could really start catching up to them when these possessions start becoming more magnified. I will say, just because he deserves a shout out, Drew Eubanks was fantastic down the stretch of this game. The Phoenix's backup center, because Yusuf Nurkic fouled out, and Eubanks had to come in. He was terrific. He kept so many possessions alive. Offensive rebounds or tap outs, things like that. Phoenix needed every single one of them. He was really, really good.
No, I mean, it was Nurkic fouling out that kind of just opened things up, it seemed like, for the Denver Nuggets. And that was Jokic just kind of slowly doing work on him. And then that kind of just took an obstacle out of the way, and it gave him a lot of room to operate. And then you saw for the Denver Nuggets, right, you saw kind of their balance. It was Jokic, it was Murray, it was Michael Porter Jr., it was Peyton Watson blocking shots down the stretch too and playing great defense. Like, he's been great for them. Just having kind of those guys able to step up on a team that's done it before, I think, is a reason they came back. And it also showed some of the flaws with the Phoenix Suns. So, like, I don't think they can do it. The question to me is, can the Pelicans get there or not? And you said, as the guy who covers them, right, it's tough to get a read on them at times. At times they look like world beaters, like tonight, where things just were wide open. You had Trey Murphy, a bench guy making 10 threes for them in this game. That's kind of big. Brandon Ingram is capable of going off. Zion is still Zion. Williamson has been healthy all year long. They've been trending in the right direction, I will say. They're now top 10 in offense. They're top 10 in defense. They actually have the fourth best net rating in the entire league, which I think says something. And it's getting to that number where you're like, oh, that actually might be a good team here. It's usually when you get 5 or above positive on a net rating, you kind of take note of those teams. They're like right at that number right now. But the problem is they've been inconsistent. And I think some nights they come out and they run point Zion, and you saw it in this game. That's why they took 49 threes in this and shot near 50% from that, because look, they're a pick your poison team. You want to throw 4 guys at Zion Williamson, you're going to have open shooters. And if Trey Murphy is there knocking them down, that you're going to lose that way. And no matter what, even with Trey hitting the shots that he did, they still went to go throw 3 bodies at Zion Williamson, because actually it's probably the smart thing to do. So you have shooters that, if they're making teams pay for the way they defend Zion, not actually spacing the court for him, but making teams pay, this team is really good. And that then helps their defense get back, get set, and they're very good at forcing turnovers. And you can do that a whole lot more when you're the opponent's inbounding the ball. I just don't think over the course of 20 games that you're going to overcome a 3-game deficit. I think if there were 40 again, there's a chance for it, but I don't think there's, this is a little bit homerish to say, but I don't think there's any of those teams in the top 4 is going to be thrilled about playing the Pelicans in the first round.
No, and the one opening the Pelicans could have, I mean, other than just they really come together, gain that consistency and the talent that they have. I mean, they are a really, I think, well-constructed team in terms of the 3 stars on top and then the pieces around them. I'm a big BI fan going back to when he was with the Lakers. I was among the very vocal minority when he was getting killed during his rookie season, telling people, like, stop just looking at the counting stats. I'm telling you, the talent is there. If you watch him every day, you will see it. But the Clippers losing Russell Westbrook, that could maybe
That's a great point.
I mean, they lost tonight against the Bucks without Giannis. And, Westbrook has played a really important role for this team, and he's been very good for them. And then in the meantime, like, who who can run that second unit? Forget in the same way as Russ, just do it, period. What effect does that have on Ty Lue's rotation? If I had to bet on it, I'm betting the Clippers will find a way to hold on to that 4 seed, but that could potentially be the opening if the Pelicans really start rounding into form.
No, that's actually a great point, right? Like that injury is significant for the Clippers. Yeah. And one of the things, you mentioned Brandon Ingram, right? He tends to play his best basketball post All-Star break. The past 2-3 years, like he has turned it on since then. He just had an incredible game against the Indiana Pacers on Friday. Zion has been healthy and is on pace to play 70 games for this team, right? Like that's how they're going to, that's incredible. Herb Jones, who I love, as one of the best defenders in the league, is leading the league in 3-point percentage since January. He was 5 of 8 and is basically automatic right now, which is kind of incredible. Like those are the type of players you need to kind of have in this stretch run that just add more layers to your offense. So I still think it's fake, but no, it wouldn't shock me necessarily if it happened. It would definitely be the Clippers falling out. I don't really see the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, or the Thunder falling out of the top 4.
Nope. I don't see that either.
Fake all around. We didn't mention the Warriors, but they're getting some help coming back. Andrew Wiggins is making his return. Also, Isaiah Thomas. We all want to see him back in the league, right? Like that would just be a happy story. Let's talk about that. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Right now, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say about how I feel about something, and you might even be thinking the same thing this week, and that is Herb Jones. He needs to be first team all defense, finally making it this year. I will go insane if that doesn't end up happening. So therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, rotating casts of hosts, breaking down all of the biggest stories around the association here. Become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday. And for your second listen today, go listen to your team show, whether that's Locked On Lakers, Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Celtics, Locked On Cavs is probably going to be pretty fun to listen to as well. So make sure that is your second listen today. All right, so we got some player news, Andy. It's been reported that Andrew Wiggins is coming back after being away from the Golden State Warriors 4 games for personal reasons, dealing with what's been reported as a serious family matter. They've been better until that game against the Boston Celtics, like whatever you want to call that. Wiggins, like a big deal coming back for them and kind of their playoff hopes and what they hope to accomplish this year?
Yeah, I mean, this team has not been good enough all year that they can get by without any talent. And especially now that Wiggins has started to round into better form. He'd been going through a really, really rough stretch for the majority of the season. Who knows if it's related at all to what he just took the personal time away from the team. It's interesting because he, I think, took off 25 games last year for personal reasons or relatively soon ago. So, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot going on in Andrew Wiggins' personal life that hopefully he and his family can just get together and get working in the right direction, because obviously it's been weighing on him. But beyond just the best wishes for him on a personal level, from a team perspective, yes, they absolutely need him. They need the depth. They need everybody they can if they want to try to turn what has been a roller coaster of a season, in the right direction.
Yeah, look, he can start. He can come off the bench for them. As you've had Kuminga playing well, Podziemski playing well, just having that kind of flexibility with your lineups, I think, is important, right? Pods is out injured for him, didn't play in that game against the Boston Celtics. So having just a little bit more depth for a team that has felt thin at times, I think, is an incredibly important thing. Like, I don't know if it truly changes their fortunes that much. You know, they're 32-28. They're 10th in the Western Conference. They're not going to fall to 15. I think the top 10 in the West are set. It's them, you know, they're either going to be 9 or 10. So do they get a home game in the play-in tournament or not? That could be significant. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of like the stakes that they're playing for here. They're still going to probably have to go on the road and win one of those games. They're a much better road team this year than they were last year, where they were like absolutely atrocious with that. But I don't know if that's going to be one of those things where all of a sudden we're like, oh, Golden State's a problem now that they've got Andrew Wiggins back.
No, but I mean, if say, for example, they want to try to pass the Lakers, where, you know, they can host that 9-10 single elimination, you know, that's a hell of a crowd that they have up in SF. So you want to try to have that game there. If, say, the 8th seed is potentially doable, and it could be, or I'd like to think it is, because I know the Lakers are working really hard to grab it, you know, the 8th seed or the 7th seed. So if it's possible for the Lakers, it's possible for the Warriors. You know, they are going to be, if they're in the playoffs, just like the Lakers, they're gonna be spending a lot of time as the road team, if not all their time as the road team. Like, you know, you were talking about, you know, whether or not the Pelicans or Suns could get to that 4. You know, the Lakers, if they could get to 6, like that,
they'd be thrilled about that. I think at that point
they'd be ecstatic if they could manage to get to the 6. But, you know, you recognize there are limits, but just having 2 cracks at one of those play-in spots, that in and of itself is a big deal.
It's big. It is, right? Like, instead of having to win 2 games, you have to win 1. And in those one-off environments, wacky things can happen, right? I go back 2 years ago when the Pelicans won the play-in tournament, had to go won a home game that had to go on the road to the Clippers to beat it. And Paul George was ruled out with like COVID symptoms or something like that, right? Like, you never know what, like, if they have Paul George, they probably win that game, I'll be honest. And then it's them facing the Phoenix Suns in the first round instead of the Pelicans, right? Things are just wonky when you get into that. You never know what might happen, right? You could have like an Anthony Edwards situation like the other night where he forgot to like get on the court to start the game because he lost track of time or whatever. Who knows if something like that happened? It probably won't be that extreme, but can you imagine?
The Warriors are a veteran team. I don't picture that happening. Andrew Wiggins does have a ring, you know.
It's true. So no, try, you know, getting away from that like weirdness and needing to just win 1 game versus 2, like, makes your life so much better. You can lose 1, like, it's okay. Like, and you can still be fine. And that's not a bad position to be in. So getting that 7 and 8 spot versus 9 and 10 is significantly important. And Wiggins can help him with that for sure.
It is so exciting right now in the West. Like,
it is.
It feels like, okay, the Lakers and Pelicans play the last game of their regular seasons
in New Orleans. Can't wait.
It feels like that game could have a lot of stakes for both teams, because the Lakers may still be trying to move upward as possible. And then in the meantime, it's not impossible, but I would be surprised if the Pelicans are locked into a seed by then. Like, I agree with that. My anticipation is that it is going to be really fluid until the last day. And it's going to be like that basically for the entire 1 through 10 in the West. That's really fun.
The Pelicans' second to last game is against the Warriors too, on the road, right? Like, there's some stakes here. I've been in the Smoothie King Center when they had to win on the final game of the regular season just to get in the playoffs and beat the Spurs. Like, I don't know, that kind of atmosphere is like special and fun. Like, can you imagine the ratings for the play-in tournament game if it's the Lakers and Warriors in that 9-10, like, loser goes home and is completely eliminated? Like, I'm sure that's not what the NBA actually wants, and that impacts the ratings for the playoffs, but that one game.
Let me just say, if the league is as rigged as a lot of the conspiracy theorists believe, if it's 9-10 Lakers, Adam Silver's going to do the right thing, and he's just going to move the Kings to that 9 seed and move either the Lakers or Warriors up 1 and be like, sorry, guys.
Like, yeah, we can't have this, right?
Look, you get it. Like, admit it. You understand. You get it.
Oh, totally. Like, all of a sudden the Kings are like docked games for some like weird thing. It's like arcane rule we've never heard of here. Got it.
Sorry,
so
Sacramento.
This way we can get both the Lakers and the Warriors into the playoffs, and they don't have to eliminate. Yeah, it's
we
literally
need them.
It's literally that. Some other news that I loved here was Shams from The Athletic reporting that Isaiah Thomas is signing with the Salt Lake City Stars, the Jazz's G League affiliate, in hopes of making an NBA comeback. Oh, I love him. I want to see him back in the NBA. That would be so cool to me. Can he help? There's no way he could actually help a playoff team, though, right?
No.
I
mean, look.
I wish.
I would love to see this happen because Isaiah Thomas was such a great story and such a uniquely entertaining and exciting player. Like the ability to really take over games at that size, as a scorer, as a distributor. I mean, he was phenomenal. But after the injury, he was never close to the same. I mean, he had 2 short stints with the Lakers. And, the first one, I'm looking at the numbers now, in 17 games, he averaged almost 16 points per game. And on 38% from the field. Like, that's just not going to be good enough. And the next stint was a couple years later with the Lakers. And he, I think, played like maybe 1 or 2 10-day contracts. And you can just see the type of athleticism and speed that he had. He doesn't have it anymore. And he'd always been a defensive liability just because he's so small. But he used to be able to score so well that you could look past the issues that you would have to work around with him defensively. He's not that guy anymore. I think he's 35 now.
Yeah, he hasn't been that guy since that injury, right? Like he had that one season with the Boston Celtics in 16-17 where he basically averaged 29 points per game, 6 assists, took shot
and he
38
injured through the playoffs.
Injured in the playoffs, right? Like it was and also dealing with his sister died during that too, right? Like the story was just like truly incredible. There's a reason that this guy is just like universally loved by everybody in the league. There's not one team's fans that don't like Isaiah Thomas, I think, because it was like just such a good story. So like he was with the Pelicans for like 3 games and I thought it was so cool, right? Like just to have like that dude on the team for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, he played his heart out that year with Boston. I mean, like literally his broken heart out because of what, the tragedy with his sister. I mean, it was that was one of the biggest reminders of just how cold the business is, like how that thing ended with him and Boston. Like it is, we love this league. We love NBA basketball, but man, it can be cold as hell.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And it's like so disappointing for everything. He was involved in the Kyrie Irving trade from the Cavaliers to the Celtics. And like, that was while he was injured and rehabbing, and the career just completely changed the trajectory from there. It was disappointing. I'd love to see him get another shot, but as we both said, like he's not helping a playoff contender. It would just be, if some team wants to sell a couple of extra tickets, do a cool thing at the end of the year, bring him in. No reason not to for something like that.
I would love to be wrong about this. I just don't suspect I am.
No, I'm with you. Like it's one of those things. You mentioned his age. He hasn't really played in the league at all. He's been trying. Like that's the thing. It's just as you said, the harsh realities that this is often a business there. Let us know what you think, though, in the comments down below. Do you want your team to sign Isaiah Thomas? Do you think he can be a difference maker for a playoff team? Who should sign him if that's the case? Let us know, though. I'm curious. But I think that's just a dude that everyone loves, so we want the best for him there. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NBA. Again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we're available on YouTube and on the Amazon Fire TV apps. I'm your host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. He's Andy Kamenetzky at Cam Brothers. Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Lakers, right there. Appreciate y'all listening. And I think we got Nick Angstad and Pat the Designer for y'all tomorrow. Should be a great show.